Alright, yo, this is my really lo-fi video. I don't know what day it is, but it's one of these days that's, I think like 6 in the chain of me doing these videos. And I'm just gonna keep doing these videos until you are solely educated in the way that we can make eternal life happen, okay? So it's gonna happen. I just keep pulling up my mask because it's like one of those masks that I got cheaply on Amazon. And everyone's wearing masks these days, so I've seen like a mask high fashion, okay, and I've seen a lot of people like try to really wear these crazy masks and do these crazy modeling things, okay. Like let's look at if I look at mask fashion, right? You're probably like, yo, I want to get to the secret of eternal life first, but let's do a little bit of random browsing first. Okay, like take a look at this. Okay, tell me that this isn't just amazing. Okay, I mean, if I pictured myself in this, I think it would be hard to like look away. You saw someone like this. This is definitely like this will turn heads. I mean, unless you turned the same head multiple times with it, you could, but not in the same day. But let's see what else is there. There's also mask fashion. I might as well go to Amazon because Amazon search is probably used just as much as Google search. I mean, look, you have people dressing, kind of showing cleavage and stuff with their masks. If you go, like, look at this bondage mask, this what they call Genda 2 Archer PU leather half face mask cosplay, anti-dust rivet mask. That's a ton of words for a piece of cloth with some metal studs in it. All right, and then you have look, you have this is kind of like the mask I have, except it's got 2 butterfly wings on it. Obviously, another like half female type mask, face mask. I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, so I'm not applying any gender specific identification elements to any of my descriptions. But I mean, like you have this looks like a Tokyo Ghoul mask. I mean, like, essentially, like, look at this. This is, I mean, you can see this being this woman's face here, right? I guess. I don't know. Whatever it is. She just has jacked shoulders. Okay, so let's get to the biology part of this video. What I want to talk about right now. I'm going to bring up my JS Paint first. As you can see, I had a little bit of paint hiding in the background there. But I'm not going to use the local paint. I'm just going to go to my JS Paint until I get a better solution for that. Okay, so basically, what are we going to talk about today? So yesterday, what did I talk about? I talked about mitochondria. And I'm drawing the so-called, the familiar classical diagram of the mitochondria, which, as you remember, has 2 membranes, an inner membrane and an outer membrane. Okay, outer membrane, as you remember, it's semi-permeable and has porins in it, right? Porins are basically intermembrane integral proteins that allow small molecules to enter and exit. And the inner membrane here, which is folded into this so-called cristae folds, cristae actually has no porin protein, so small molecules don't simply diffuse into this space. But really, the action of the mitochondria goes on in both this intermembrane space and this inner matrix area, where this lumen area called the matrix of the mitochondria is, which is very viscous and filled with many proteins, and actually where all the ATP gets generated from. Okay, so that's the mitochondria. Then we have chloroplasts. I'm not going to go into chloroplasts too much yet, but I will later on. But chloroplasts basically are in plants, right? And according to the endosymbiotic theory, chloroplasts were also bacteria about the same size as mitochondria that were ingested into cells during about 1.5 billion years ago or something like that. I don't remember the exact time, but anyway, chloroplasts have a ton of components with them, and I have to actually study the chloroplast components to be sure what goes on there. But basically, photosynthesis, you know what? I'm gonna stop being lazy. Basically, photosynthesis as you learned probably in middle school biology, happens in chloroplasts. And there's a pigment called chlorophyll, which is responsible for photosynthesis. Again, I'm bringing this up because this type of organelle, this membrane brown organelle, the chloroplast, is like the sister organelle or brother organelle, whatever, of the mitochondria. Okay, and that brother organelle kind of lives in plant cells and allows plant cells to be autotrophic. So what is autotrophic, right? Autotrophic means that basically they can generate their own, let me not mess up the we're going to learn together, right? Autotrophic. There's trophs, right? An autotroph is a primary producer organism that produces complex organic compounds using carbon from simple substances such as carbon dioxide, generally using energy from light or inorganic chemical reactions. Autotrophs do not need a living source of carbon or energy and are the producers of in a food chain such as the plants and land and algae or water. So an autotroph, essentially, auto means by oneself, automatically. Troph, I forgot what troph was, but I think it means food, so automatic food. So again, autotrophs, which are essentially, there's algae and plants because they have chlorophyll and chloroplasts. They don't need external sources of carbohydrates and other molecules and sugars, which are carbohydrates, and other molecules needed for life because they'll create that from carbon dioxide, much more simpler, basic substances. They'll get their carbon building blocks for that from carbon dioxide and light and inorganic chemical reactions that occur in the, believe the Calvin cycle, but let me just double check. Calvin cycle. You high school biology people probably think I'm dumb, but you know what? I'm gonna outlearn this and then super learn you all. So the Calvin cycle, light-dependent reactions, biosynthetic phase, dark reactions, or photosynthetic carbon reduction cycle of photosynthesis are the chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide and other compounds into glucose. Okay, so basically you have CO2. And I'm not going to draw the whole chemical formula because I'm not there yet. I will be 1 point CO2 plus CO2 goes plus light goes to what did it say? CO2 CO2 goes to glucose, right? Glucose. So what is glucose? Remember, and it's really weird that I know this, right? You must be thinking it's strange because I'm jumping all around, right? That's kind of how I learn things. But glucose is a hexose sugar. Okay, hexose meaning it's 6 carbon ring with oxygen as one of the atoms in the heterocyclic ring, primary ring, and glucose has, as all sugars do, it has alcohols at different parts of it, right? And, I think I drew this as a 5. This should be a 6-member carbon ring. Okay. And glucose binds through O-glycosidic bonds to other glucose molecules, which are stitched together through dehydration synthesis reaction to form polysaccharides, which examples of polysaccharides that form from glucose. Glucose is a monosaccharide. Examples of polysaccharides that form from glucose are, you tell me. No, they're cellulose, okay, and you have glycogen. Cellulose is the primary component of plant cell walls. We've kind of tangented into plants a little bit, so I might as well talk about those a little. But cellulose is basically chains of alpha and beta glucose linked together, right, into these straight chain forms, which are connected together through hydrogen bonds, which kind of make them strong and inseparable when you're in parallelicity. Okay, if these are polysaccharides, these are cellulose polysaccharides of, I believe, alpha glucose and beta glucose. Also, you have glucose bound together in glycogen, right? These are my crude glucose monomers, and glycogen actually is basically one of the sugar storage mechanisms in animals. Okay, so when your body stores sugar, it stores it as glycogen. Just like when it stores fat, it stores it as adipose tissue, and that's basically fat molecules all combined together in fat cells. Okay, so so glycogen looks like this, and basically glycogen is cross-linked with other glucose molecules because you have this kind of thing going on, right? You have this sort of like staggered cross-linking configuration, and therefore glycogen is, it's significantly sturdier, right, than I don't know if sturdy is the right word, but glycogen is significantly harder to disassociate than, let's say, starch, right? Because starch, glycogen, cellulose, they're all made of pretty much the same thing, except the monomers are slightly variations of glucose, alpha and beta glucose, okay? Anyway, that was just me recalling my memory of things, but you're forming glucose. Plants form glucose from the Calvin cycle, which gets stored as starches and amylose and amylopectin and all the other basic forms of glucose storage. Okay, glycogen, remember, is for animals. All right, so, and then a lot goes on into this Calvin cycle, but this all happens pretty much the fluid-filled area of the chloroplast outside the thylakoid membranes, the thylakoid membranes. Thylakoid membranes are in the chloroplasts. So there are these stacks, right, of stacks of endomembrane organelles, and they're within the chloroplast. So they're endomembrane, right? They're within the thing that's within the membrane. So, and basically the chlorophyll exists around these thylakoid stacks. Okay, at some point I'm going to get more specific on how this structure is and then present that to you, but from my perspective it's still research. Okay, so anyway, so the next thing you want to talk about, now, this isn't going to be as long a video as other videos because actually I was doing a sound test in the beginning of the video, so that took a little bit of time. So let's go into, since we're talking about membranes, right, we might as well go into the extracellular matrix. Okay, what is that? So say you have a cell, right? You have two cells. All right, you have cell A and cell B. Now, in your body, cells don't exist by themselves, okay? Even if you've seen things like this, right, where you have diagrams of skin cells, especially skin cells, right? These actually exist in a tissue form, right? Because you go from cells, then you go, the next higher unit of organization in the body is a tissue, and then the next higher unit than the tissue is the organ. So tissues are complicated because they're not just bundles of cells. Tissues are basically cells that are stitched together somehow, okay? And the stitching in between the cells, right, which hold them together and allow them to coordinate and communicate, actually, it's quite interesting, it's called the extracellular matrix. Extracellular because it's outside of the cell. Matrix because there is a matrix, essentially, of molecules, of many different kinds of molecules, mostly collagen, that forms this connective section. And collagen is actually interesting because collagen forms about 30% of the protein in your body. So you would think, that's interesting because that rest is muscle, right? But when you think muscle, when most people think muscle, they think protein, right? But actually, 25 in mammals, most abundant protein in mammals, that's us, includes us, making up from 25% to 35% of the whole body protein content, okay? So the rest is muscles, but a significant portion is collagen. So when you're getting your protein, right, you're eating your whatever protein you're eating, right, chances are that a lot of that, right, it's getting digested and turned into constituent amino acids and whatnot, and then getting reassembled, anabolized at some point into muscles, but also muscle cells, but also into collagen, right? So think about that, right? You need protein to keep your cells together, otherwise you would fall apart. Okay. So I don't know if they classify the extracellular matrix as its own separate organ, but as you'll see down the road, the extracellular matrix is so complicated, it could be. I mean, skin is an organ, right? I guess that's the organ level organization, right? Extracellular matrix is a component of organization. So anyway, so this extracellular matrix, what is it composed of? Okay, and how does it hold cells together? It's a very complicated topic. But why am I drawing these hot dog things here? Okay, so remember actin, okay? Actin were cytoskeletal elements, the smallest cytoskeletal elements, about 7 nanometers in diameter, that kind of gave some structural compression resistance to a cell. Okay, remember compression resistance because tension resistance is mediated by intermediate filaments. So actin prevents a cell from being collapsed, and that's why actin primarily lives around the boundaries of the cell to keep it kind of like inflated and balancing osmotic pressure and water potential. So basically what happens here, these are integrin proteins. Integrin proteins are dimers, okay? Meaning that when you look closely at an integrin, when you look closely at a cell wall, right? Integrins are dimers, okay? What is a dimer? A dimer is basically consists of two monomeric units, okay? Right, like you have a polymer, you have a dimer, you have an allotrimer, you have a quadrimer, an oligopolymer or oligomer, and then you have a polymer, right? So basically dimers and this is not just a simple polymer. These are complex proteins. But you can look at your phospholipid bilayer, right, like this. And your integrin proteins live within your phospholipid bilayer, okay? And they're integrin because they are important to cellular cell signaling through the ECM, okay? Through the extracellular matrix. And what did I say the extracellular matrix was? The extracellular matrix is the connective matrix of different proteins which holds cells together in a tissue. Okay, so integrin through several indirect other intermediate proteins connects to actin, okay? I'm just going to draw the actin like this. As we said, actin kind of looks like this, actin, okay? And integrin connects to actin. This is the alpha subunit, by the way. Alpha integrin. And you have beta integrin. And if we were going to go into Wikipedia and look at the specifics, you'd see a huge difference in the integrin protein. We can look at the integrin's crystal structure later too. I think it's fairly complex. It's just like we looked at the beta barrel crystal structure yesterday, which was fairly complex. But anyway, and then the integrin connects to something called fibronectin. I'm so lazy. Fibronectin. Okay. So what is fibronectin? Fibronectin is also a very complex protein, and actually it has a plethora of different functions in the body, and there's multiple types of it. But essentially, for this purposes of this discussion, fibronectin connects to collagen. Collagen is a structural protein, a massive structural protein of tissues, and they are rod-like. A lot of these proteins have a similar motif in that they're rod-like. Like fibronectin is roughly rod-like. Beta and alpha integrin, when you're looking at like a solidish diagram, they're kind of rod-like. Collagen is rod-like, and Collagen has a triple helix structure, I believe. We're gonna go into the structure of collagen at some point, but it's very complicated and it's still not really understood by people. Even though we talk about how different products, moisturizers, etc., help to replenish collagen, or helps different foods help to replenish collagen, we really don't understand this entire structure, right? And actually, but the whole point of what I'm trying to discuss here is that collagen connects through fibronectin, connects to alpha integrin and beta integrin, which then connects to actin. And basically what happens is through cellular communication, through a ligand, which I'm not going to get into the specifics of this ligand, a ligand attaching to the alpha integrin and the beta integrin, it causes it to open up, right? Sort of open up, and that affects the actin, okay? And essentially, when they open and close, you have different things happening with this integrin, and also it affects the fibronectin, and therefore you have some sort of structural kind of situation going on with the cell, okay? So that's how cells connect to collagen, right? But cells also connect to each other, interestingly enough, right? Cells, besides through collagen, cells have other ways of connecting to each other. So this is basically the extracellular space that's intercellular between these two cells. This is extracellular space. Extracellular space. This extracellular space is basically what happens here. Okay, you have these two integrin-looking proteins, but this is an integrin. This is only one here, so I'm not gonna draw. This is something called cadherin, okay, which is calcium adherence protein. Okay, cadherin is a very, very important protein because cadherin, based on the number of calcium ions that are in this extracellular space, intercellular space, cadherin creates more adhesion to other cadherin on other cells, and thus a stronger linking occurs within the cell. So it's another element. This is cadherin. You can look into the structure of cadherin. Let's look at some structures. Cadherin crystal structure images. I don't think we'll find a crystal structure of cadherin. We were seeing a micrograph of cadherin. Oh, no, that's E-cadherin antibody. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. I wish I could find a good crystal structure. We don't have to find a crystal structure. Wikipedia actually usually has good crystal structures of proteins. Okay, you have catenin, vinculins, actinin, actin filaments. These are all these connective junctions. Okay, adherence junctions. That's where cadherin combines. Okay. Anyway, see you later.